Hey there, greetings everybody. Welcome here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here with our Wednesday Night Favorites, which is a show that we do every Wednesday night in which I pick a top 5 or maybe a top 10 or even a top 15 or a ranking video, or in this case we're doing a top 25. So I'm doing my top 25 sweet, smooth sounding rock vocalists. So they're sweet, their voices are sweet sounding, or maybe it's just a smooth sounding. Some of them have a combination of both. And so what I usually do is I will rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. In the case of the 25 on here, least doesn't mean they're no good. Least means they're good, but they just have other people are better. So if you look at my 25th guy, I think he's really good, but the top guy is fantastic. So that's generally how I do it. So I go from 25 to 1. And then I'll give you some honorable mentions, which is grown by 2 now since I had to redo this whole video because I left 2 people off of it. And what I was doing is I was making a note of everybody I wanted, talking to other people at the same time. And I realized I left these 2 guys off. And they said, well, you could just put them in the honorable mentions. Nah, these guys are 2 top 10 guys. They got to be in the list. You know, there's no way around it. So I had to redo the thing and restructure it and do my list again. And actually took off a couple people that I just think probably could have made this easily. Anyways, I have my props ready to go. We have my lists ready to go, and I'm now ready to go. So I hope you will enjoy this video. It's meant specifically for that. So these are just my own favorites, and I've kind of augmented my favorites with a little bit of a subtext here. So obviously, my list of favorite vocalists is quite a bit different than this because there's a lot of guys in there that don't have that sweet sounding voice that get in there. There's one of the guys who should be, most people would think, oh, he's got to be right at the top because he's a sweet sounding guy too. But I just think I wanted more of that sweet sounding voice. So some of the guys who would have normally been higher up are a little bit lower because they don't have quite that voice. Maybe they're not quite as, maybe they're more smooth and not quite as sweet. So that's why I changed it a little bit for that particular thing. So even though these are my top 25 favorite, they're not necessarily in the order that they would be if we were just going by favorite alone and no other reason. I wanted that sweet stuff to be more at the top. So I hope you can kind of understand what I'm saying. I'm not even sure if I understand it, but that's the way we're doing it. So we're going to get underway now with it. Number 25, coming in at number 25. Some people will find this surprising. They would think he would be higher. Is Robert Plant. Robert Plant has one of those really kind of different voices to me. It's smooth, but at times it kind of has a little bit of raspiness to it on occasion too. It sounds sometimes a little bit forced. It sounds almost what do you call it? I can't think of it. Anyways, but it's definitely smooth sounding and definitely has got a little bit of that sweetness to it. So he had to come in at number 25. He had to be on the list. The other 2 guys I knocked off, I couldn't see them, even though I like them both quite a bit. I just couldn't see them knocking him out of this position. He had to be on the list. There's just no 2 ways about it. Oh, I was thinking of falsetto is the word I was thinking of. He sometimes has a little bit of that falsetto sound. Whether it's actually falsetto or not, I don't really know, but it sounds like it. So there you go. Robert Plant, number 25. Number 24, maybe the closest thing to Robert Plant, David Coverdale. I love this album cover too, so that's why I picked it. Of Whitesnake. He has really smooth, such a kind of masculine, very smooth, almost rock. He's got that rock star sound just down to a pat. I think he had to be on the list too. I didn't really want him and Plant so close together because of the similarities between the voice, but this is where they ended up, 24th and 25th. So he's number 24, David Coverdale. Number 23 is very different. Cass Elliot, right here in the yellow, or sorry, over here in the yellow. Fantastic voice. She had a range that was like, not many had as good a range as her. Maybe half a dozen people that are in that same range, and she's definitely had to be in there. The music wasn't as rocky as I normally like from this kind of thing, but I had to put her in there because she's just, you can't not say that she's one of the greatest vocalists in rock history. She is, and on top of that, her voice is so operatic, so smooth sounding. Yeah, so Cass Elliott's coming here at number 23 from the Mamas and the Papas, or Mama Cass if you prefer. Next up, from the Guess Who, yes, Burton Cummings. I wasn't going to put him in here because I don't listen to the Guess Who much anymore, haven't for years, but he's got that absolutely fantastic voice. It's different than a lot of rock vocalists, but it's so smooth, so well orchestrated. He just knows how to put the singing out there. So I just couldn't come up with any reason not to put him on there, so he has to be on here at number 22. Burton Cummings. Number 21, I don't have actually a CD. I had several of them, but I think they were amongst my daughter's favorite stuff of my non-modern type of rock, or 70s rock, which is basically what I was thinking of. So the artist is Elvis Presley. Definitely one of the smoothest singers of all time. Just a killer voice. Had to be on here. How can you not put the King of Rock on here, right? You can't. But my CDs are gone. And I'm pretty sure I know where they went. Yeah, it's a free-for-all at the Murphy home, right? So next up, this artist I've long liked. I think he's got a really smooth-sounding voice. I wouldn't say he's a sweet-sounding guy, but his voice is very, very strong, very catchy, very distinctive, and we're talking about Phil Collins, of course. I like this album too, it's good. So number 20, Phil Collins. Up next, in number 19, yes, this guy's got one of those voices that is just absolutely killer. It's smooth, it's sweet, it's distinctive, it's everything you could want from a rock vocalist, and the music's good too. We're talking about Foreigner's Lou Gramm. Yeah, definitely had to be on this list at number 19. At number 18, one of the smoothest, most lovely voices I've heard in rock. Some people might say this is more pop, maybe more even folky. But we're talking about Karen Carpenter. Yeah, the lovely Karen Carpenter and her extraordinary voice had to be on this list at number 18. Now we're moving up to number 17. I like this guy's vocals in all of the stuff he does. I don't necessarily like all the music he does, but I do like all the vocals that he's done over the years. Very strong, very frontal voice, very smooth, but deep. Not really what you would call a high-end voice, but definitely a deep voice. And we're talking about John Wetton, of course, one of the great rock vocalists. Been on lots of different stuff too, but I chose the Asia one because I found on the Asia, because all the songs are just like that. They just are frontal. His vocals are frontal and smooth, so that's why I chose it. Next up, so moving up, number 16 from a band that I love quite a bit. I love both the vocalists in this band a lot. Very different range though. You got one that's kind of low end, more bluesy sounding, and then this guy whose vocals are absolutely, they're in that falsetto range, but very high, very sweet sounding, very smooth. And we're talking about Roger Hodgson, of course. So number 16 is Roger Hodgson. Number 15, kind of the 60s style vocalist. You know, the 60s didn't have a great deal of that sweet sounding vocalist. They had a lot of really good vocalists, definitely a lot of good ones. But this guy is known for his falsetto. It's very distinctive voice. I think it's very smooth. I think it's in many ways very smooth, lovely voice. We're talking about Frankie Valli, of course. Frankie Valli of the Four Seasons. Next up, this is a guy that I originally wasn't sure he should be on the list because he's very poppy in a lot of ways, almost like a lot of that mainstream pop that's popular now. But at one time, he had some really good rocking stuff, and that's the stuff that we're talking about today, the stuff that he was really good at rocking. And he's got very distinctive voice. To me, I think his voice is very sweet. It's smooth in a lot of ways, really catchy as well. Talking about Elton John, got to be on this list, so he comes in at number 14. And the last one in my first stack, to be honest, I like his vocals with another group more than I like his vocals with this group. But this group is the one he's known for, and this is the group that really I discovered his voice from this group, so it has to be these guys. So we're talking about Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and of course we're talking about Greg Lake, who has a fantastic voice. Fantastic. Very similar to John Wetton, maybe not quite as forward, maybe a tiny bit less deep, but very smooth, very catchy, very memorable. I love Greg Lake's voice, so he's going to come here at number 13. So that's it for the first stack. We're just going to get the other stack over here where we can get at it. So now we're in the top 12. So this was where I made most of my changes because the two guys that I forgot are both in the top 10 actually. So they knocked some people down a little bit. So number 12. This is a vocalist who I think has very strong, he can have a deep voice, he can have a medium voice. At times he can have some really good falsetto as well. I think his voice is among the smoothest and the sweetest of all hard rock voices out there. We're talking about Paul Stanley. I just did a video on him on Sunday. If you haven't seen it, it's part of the Kiss the Originals four video mini series, so go back and watch it if you want. He's such a great vocalist, maybe not so much anymore because 50 years have passed, but in his day, I think he was among the best rock vocalists of that smooth sounding. Now, the funniest part about his voice too is that it's still got that kind of native New York tinge to it, which is kind of weird, but it's just really, really catchy song, really catchy vocals from Paul Stanley, of course. Next up, from a band, I don't have an album for this band. I've been listening to them quite a bit over the last month or two, little bits and snippets from here and there, and a full album. People have been talking to me about different stuff they did. I actually had a album given to me from them by band on the Ben's Album Challenge. I believe it was that might have been on the Great Album Challenge, one of those two. And so I starting to get into the voice of this woman who I think her voice is incredibly high, such range, such a high range she can reach, more than anybody else on this list maybe. And we're talking about Annie Haslam of Renaissance. One of the almost operatic voices I've ever heard for rock music anyways. So she's got to be on this list. Even though she's still fairly new to me, I still think there's no way I could ignore her. She had to be on the list. So Annie Haslam comes in at number 11. The next one up was one of the two people that I forgot and had to go back and do. And there's no way I couldn't put this guy on. Not only is his voice sweet sounding, it's one of my favorite voices to sing. I think he sings some of the best songs in that range, just and high too, so very sweet. So we're talking about, of course, Tommy Shaw of Styx. Fantastic vocals he has. So many songs that he sings I absolutely love. Tommy Shaw had to be on this list. There's no way I could put him in the honorable mentions and look myself in the face. So Tommy Shaw comes in at number 10. Okay, so moving on. Number 9. This guy's kind of very similar to Tommy Shaw in a lot of ways. Very, very smooth sounding voice. His voice is much higher range, though, than even Tommy's, I think. A lot of falsetto on his voice, but so strong, so catchy, so good. Some of my favorite songs are by him. And all this, and the guy plays guitar while he's doing this. It's just incredible. We're talking about Rick Emmett, of course. He's going to come in at number 9. Just one of the vocalists that people don't talk enough about. But if you haven't had a chance to hear him, or you don't know anything about this group, you got to listen to him. Voice is great. And I do love Gil Moore. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a fantastic singer too. I don't think he fits into this category. I think his voice is like Davis from Supertramp. Really good voices for what they do, but they're just not the sweet sounding kind of voices that you're getting on this particular video. So Rick Emmett coming in here at number 9. Number 8, maybe the sweetest sounding male vocals of anybody. When it comes to sweet, this guy's syruply sweet. And it's the word lovely describes this guy's voice. It's such a loving, lovely voice. And the funny part is I didn't know much about this guy before. I used to think, he's kind of weird. I don't really like his, but after I started listening to some of the stuff he has, it's so fantastic. So we're talking about Roy Orbison. Does anybody have a sweeter sounding voice than that man? I don't know, maybe, but I can't think of anybody. Not in rock, anyways. Okay, so number 7 was also not on my list and had to be on this list. He was one of the first people I thought of when I was doing this. Not necessarily a sweet-sounding voice, but very smooth, so memorable, so distinctive. And at advanced age he's in his 70s now, 73 or something, and his voice is just as good as it was back in the early days. Such a performer as well, and I just love his stuff and everything he does. We're talking about Peter Gabriel. How could I forget him? I don't know. But he was the one I noticed. Wait a minute, Peter Gabriel's not on this list. What the hell happened? Got to go back and redo it all, right? Next guy up is probably my favorite rock vocalist of all time. His voice is really smooth, very strong, very out there, heavy, and at times can be absolutely killer. Is he sweet? I don't know if he qualifies as a sweet-sounding voice, but definitely operatic and definitely powerful and smooth. We're talking about Ronnie James Dio. Love the man. Fantastic. Nobody has had a bigger impact vocally than Ronnie James Dio has on me. He comes in at number 6, though. So the top 5 guys, I tried to steer with those special voices that are not only smooth, but have an element of real sweetness, almost angelicalness to their album, to their vocals. In some cases, multiple ranges of angelicalness too. So, and I think overall, I think that they are the best 5 that I chose for this. So number 5, John Anderson of Yes, or of his solo stuff. Doesn't matter what John Anderson sings. The biggest thing about John Anderson I love is that he has that sweet sounding, high-pitched, smooth, memorable voice. But on top of all of that, it's still the same. Like, this has been going on 55, 60 years. The man is closing in on 80 and still has a voice like God almost. Yeah, fantastic. Love John Anderson. Love his vocals. Love everything that he does. Next up, this is a guy who hasn't had much recording. Like, there's not a lot of stuff out there with him on it, but the stuff that is out there is absolutely extraordinary. The man has a voice angelical as you can be, so smooth, so sweet, so high, and at so many ranges. And there just isn't enough of it for me to warrant him any higher, but it's Brad Delp. Is there anybody with a sweeter sounding voice than that? Well, maybe Roy Orbison has a sweeter sounding voice, but I don't think he has that range, and he doesn't definitely have the ability to stay at such a high range for such a long time, and even have a higher range. Next up, maybe the greatest female vocalist of all time, in my estimation. Definitely my favorite. She has the range. She has the smoothness to her voice. She has that. She can go high beyond most females can do, and still maintain that smooth apparatus. Just a lovely voice. Ann Wilson. We all knew that she was going to be on this list, right? The top two, well, one of them's not going to surprise you, but the other one might surprise you, but maybe it won't. It doesn't surprise me. I think this guy is my favorite guy to sing. I love singing his songs. I think he has the most angelic voice. It's smooth. It's high. It's so pleasurable. It's sweet in every way that you can think of. And he sings some of my most favorite songs, too. Talking about Dennis DeYoung, former member of Styx, but even when he's not in Styx, he still has it. And he's in his 70s now, and he still has that range. It's amazing. It's amazing. And number one, we all know who this is, right? Not my favorite band, not a band I listen to much, but there's no denying the range that this man has. There's no denying the power that this man has. There's no denying the sweet sound of his voice when he wants it to be. And the absolute operatic sound to his voice, and the way he can control everything that he does. And any man that can get on the stage and do all that in a diaper wins me over, man. There you go. Queen. Freddie Mercury. I think he's maybe the greatest vocalist of all time. He's not my favorite, but for this list of sweet sounding and smooth sounding and range and singing great songs and being powerful and being a front man and everything, yeah, got to be Freddie Mercury up at the top of the deck, I think. So there you have it. That's my top 25. So I'm just going to go over them once more. I'll just reiterate them all. But this time we'll go from 1st to 25th. And then I'll give you the honorable mentions, the unfortunate people that I couldn't put on my list. And I feel bad about some of them because I wanted them on the list, but I just couldn't figure out how to get them in there. And who was I going to take out? I don't know. Anyways, Freddie Mercury, number 1. Dennis DeYoung, number 2. Ann Wilson, number 3. Brad Delp, number 4. John Anderson, number 5. Ronnie James Dio, the late and great Ronnie James Dio, number 6. Peter Gabriel, number 4. Number 7, sorry. Number 8, the late great Roy Orbison. Number 9, Rick Emmett of Triumph. Number 10, Tommy Shaw, joining the dynamic duo from Styx. And number 10. Number 11, Annie Haslam of Renaissance. Number 12, Paul Stanley of Kiss. Now, let's get these other guys over here. Number 13, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, also with King Crimson. And that's where I love him the most, but can't take anything away from what he's done with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And we're talking about Greg Lake at number 13. Number 14, the legendary Elton John, mostly for his older stuff I love, which he has such a smooth voice with. Another guy whose voice I just love to try to emulate if I can. Number 15, the falsetto giant and wonder of the world, Frankie Valli, at number 15. Number 16, Roger Hodgson. Number 17, John Wetton, also with King Crimson too, also with UK, and he did some of his own solo stuff as well. I'm sure there's other stuff that I'm not even thinking of. Number 18, Karen Carpenter. Number 19, Lou Gramm. What a sweet voice. Number 20, Phil Collins. Number 21, Elvis Presley, of course, which my daughter has my collection, but that's fine. I don't even know that she has it. Somebody has it, but I don't have it. That's all I can tell you. Burton Cummings, number 22. That was right. Number 23, Cass Elliot. Number 24, David Coverdale, also with Coverdale Page, also with Deep Purple. Yeah, he's been around a bit, but I like the stuff with Whitesnake the best, though. And then, of course, Robert Plant, who also had quite a bit of solo stuff, which I also liked quite a bit, but I chose a Zeppelin album because that's how I know him. And so there you have it, my top 25 favorite sweet or smooth sounding rock artist vocalists. The honorable mentions, so we got about a dozen. Well, originally had about 10, now we got about a dozen because I added a couple to it. So the two that didn't make it, that were bumped off because of Tommy Shaw and Peter Gabriel, were Lawrence Gowan, whose voice I absolutely love, especially his solo stuff, so smooth. But even the more modern stick stuff, like the last album, he was great on that. He did a couple of tracks where I thought he almost sounded like Freddie Mercury at times. So good. And Benjamin Orr, who I really didn't want to take off this list because I just absolutely adore his voice, but I couldn't find a place to squeeze him on without knocking somebody who I also adored. Then we have the other ones who were on the list. Michelle Phillips, of course, who was Mama Cass's other mama. Papa from the other Mama Phillips, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Not as notable a vocalist as Cass Elliot, but definitely a high range soprano. Very few rock vocalists of that time period had the kind of soprano range that Michelle Phillips had. Sting, of course, from The Police, great voice. Steve Walsh, not one of my favorite vocalists or anything like that, but how can you not recognize Steve Walsh? Is his voice smooth or sweet? He's got a little bit of it for sure, but powerful, definitely. He's up there with that. Grace Slick, of course, of Jefferson Air. I like the Jefferson Airplane stuff a little bit more. Steve Perry, of course, from Journey. He was on the original list at one point, and then I bumped him off for somebody else. Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac. I know some people think that, oh, what about Christine McVie? I always found Christine McVie's voice to be too falsetto. I never thought of it as smooth or sweet. I found it's a good voice, but I just didn't find it didn't resonate with me with that. So as much as I like her voice, I just didn't think it belonged here. Donald Fagen, he was another one. I wasn't quite sure if he belonged on this list, but he's got a great voice, no doubt about it. Art Garfunkel, really high range. I think he really helped cement that Simon and Garfunkel harmony duo. Like, I think he's the main cog of it, I think. Joni Mitchell, of course, another one that's kind of like Christine McVie, very high range, but hers is more marshmallowy, almost sickly sweet at sometimes. So those are the honorable mentions. I'm sure there's other people that I just, there's so many great vocalists who have that great vocal sound that's so sweet and so smooth. You can't possibly remember them all. And then, of course, there's some people I haven't gotten into yet, so I didn't include them on the list if I didn't know enough about them to say anything. So if you have any like that, you can put them in the comments section below. I hope you enjoy this video. It was fun to make, and I don't want to remake it again, so I'm happy to say that it worked out good. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. Don't forget the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And I hope to see you again next Wednesday on Wednesday Night Favorites. Have yourself a good evening. Take care and goodbye.